I've arrested cops and doctors and nurses. Unfortunately, it could be anyone.
My guest today is Detective Heidi Chance, who spent nearly 3 decades deep in the shadows, undercover, investigating and bringing down predators who traffic children. Now officially retired from police work, yet relentless, she's the force behind A Chance for Awareness, empowering communities and law enforcement through training, webinars, media, and her debut book, Talk to Them. What are the most overlooked digital dangers kids face today, and how these parents can notice that?
The draw for a kid to have an open to the public profile, whether their parents say it's okay or not, is the issue. Because that is literally an open door into your house, into your child's bedroom, and you don't know who's engaging with your kid because of this open profile. So I think that parents need to educate themselves on their privacy settings and how to lock all of that down and focus in on educating themselves about these apps.
What do you need essentially in what you're doing?
I need parents to talk to their kids. And if you don't know how, that's why I wrote the book. And then I need people to stop buying people for sex, and we need people to not be filming TikToks, but actually be reporting crimes. Just because they're put in prison or jail doesn't mean anything stops.
Welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues. I'm your host, Ali Horiat. My goal in this program is to educate our audience about various global issues and how we can help. My guest today is Detective Heidi Chance, who spent nearly 3 decades deep in the shadows, undercover, investigating and bringing down predators who traffic children. Now officially retired from police work, yet relentless, she's the force behind A Chance for Awareness, empowering communities and law enforcement through training, webinars, media, and her debut book, Talk to Them. Featured in PBS Frontline's Sex Trafficking in America, Heidi helped secure a record 493 and a half years of prison sentences for trafficker guilty of 101 child sex charges, and now works tirelessly to decode the digital risks endangering today's youth. In an era when silence enables predators, Heidi's story is certainly a call to action to see clearly, speak boldly, and protect fiercely. Heidi's mission extends beyond law enforcement. She now writes, trains, and speaks with her modern-day situational awareness digital course and Talk to Them guide, shifting from individual casework to empowering entire communities to recognize and respond to trafficking. Hello, Detective Heidi Chance, and welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues.
Hello, thank you so much for that intro.
Oh, it's all yours. It's an honor, and I'm how do I say this? Thankful, but a lot more than thankful that people like you are at least out there, because it's horrible as it is. So I can just imagine what it would be like if we, if nobody was involved in this kind of work. Now, I want to start with saying you've probably witnessed the worst forms of human cruelty working undercover. We see this sometimes in film. We hear it in the media, in real stories, but we never get to see what you see. My question really is, what motivates you to continue this work now, as whether an author, an advocate, or a trainer, an instructor, after you've left the force? Because after 30 years of literally trauma after trauma, you kind of feel like you're the one who needs to buy that cottage in the mountains or the waterfront home and just, have a dog and relax and forget about all of it and heal. But here you are.
Yeah, going off grid doesn't sound half bad.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, there's a lot that motivates me, obviously, with some of the successes that I've had with some of my investigations, more than one case involving a trafficker that's been put in prison for more than 100 years. And I think that's inspiring. And I think that I wouldn't be able to stand by and not share my experiences with not only the public, but also law enforcement, because there's so many things going on with law enforcement today where it's disheartening and it's hard, and it's a lot of people quit. And I think having success stories and showing them this can happen, you can do this, you can make a difference, that has to continue. And I wouldn't be able to stand by and not let that happen.
And all the power to you. What did your work in law enforcement teach you about fairness, accountability, justice, holding perpetrators to account, all of that? I mean, you just touched on it right there. So I'm going off of what you said at the end. I mean, there's that hope that you're bringing with you. And then, like you said, there's so many people who quit and see the other side of, justice not being served, for example, or the difficulty of dealing with these things on a daily basis. So how has that empowered you and taught you in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I've learned so much because I had the unique experience of watching this problem evolve and then our response to it. For example, when I first started investigating this crime, I tested for a position as a detective with the Vice unit, is what it was called back then. Now it's the Heat unit. But at that time, they only allowed one female officer position because the focus at that time was arresting prostitutes. Whereas now we've evolved into seeing what's really going on, and that these people, most of them are possibly victims of being trafficked. And now I'm happy to say that the squads outweigh women to men because you need female undercovers to target sex buyers and traffickers. That is how we fight this problem, and they are the front line.
That's a big shift, when you think about it. You are right. I mean, I'm old enough to remember that people, whether it was the police officers or whether it was just regular civilians, they looked at prostitution from the lens of that girl needs to be arrested or taken off the street or whatever it was. Whereas now in that criminal mindset, like she is the bad person, right? And so now it's kind of shifting gaze into what's happening behind the scenes and the actual trafficking, which we were kind of oblivious about, even I'd say 20 years ago, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where we're asking the question we were never asking before, which is, what can I actually do to help you get out of this situation so we don't meet again tomorrow night? And in addition to that, having services and someone to help guide them. So we have a victim advocate now assigned to the unit. And so in the moment of a rescue and a contact with someone, we can say, let's get you some help. And then this person, this victim advocate, who's, confidential, she's not law enforcement, she's not going to share anything with us unless this victim wants to talk to us. Immediately, she can provide her with a bus ticket, a flight, backline phone number to a shelter to get her to a safe place, her or him, by the way. There are male victims as well. But that's, we weren't doing business that way before.
I want to go off script for a moment and ask a deeper question. How much of that is dependent on the public, and how much of it is dependent, this rescue is dependent on the police, and however ways you expand this system, because you're out of the force now, but you speak of the support systems that are outside the police that help, and the advocacies and everything else. But at the end of the day, trafficking isn't, the way I see it, trafficking isn't a problem of one deranged or greedy person who is kidnapping or, forcing or coercing or bringing fear into, or even a gang that does this into predominantly younger women and places them in this position. I, as a public person outside of that scenario, have to purchase that service. I have to go in and actually give money, because if I'm not giving money, why is that evil entity? Why are they putting so much effort into dodging the police? Putting fear into these younger women and men at to a lower extent, and doing all of this if there's no pay, if there's no gain, if there's none of that happening. So, do you think that just policing is enough?
No, I mean, obviously, coming from the side of also watching communities' understanding of this problem also evolve, because I can tell you when I first started investigating, we would have the same people pimping out kids that they are doing today back then, and we're talking 2012, 2011, and they were getting plea offers for like 6 years, 7 years in prison instead of, going to trial, because we had prosecutors that didn't really know how to do these cases. And there wasn't, for lack of a better explanation, there wasn't public awareness about it. So they didn't see this as jury appeal, where a jury would understand if I'm testifying that this person's committing a crime of prostitution, but in my next sentence, I need you, the jury, to see them as a victim. And so that's where educating the public for me is extremely important, because I've seen the evolution. I call it the power of awareness, but it is from back then when we were doing these cases, and we had judges that didn't understand, prosecutors, even myself, detectives not doing the job that we're doing now with our understanding of this whole problem, to today where we've got juries that are informed, because it's an informed public that equals an informed jury that holds these people accountable. And I can submit the cases, we can prosecute the cases, but if we don't have an informed public that knows, then you have this issue of what just happened with the P. Diddy trial. I mean, that's like showing, number one, how we still have a ways to go, because that just happened. And that's because that jury didn't understand what sex trafficking was, and a lot of the dynamics of the victim going through what they went through.
Okay. And now, in those cases, in those high profile cases, that make the media, the Jeff Epsteins and all the other ones, those are individual cases that are, one thousandths of the cases that are out there. But even if we were to, like you said, arrest all of the traffickers that you're talking about from 2011, still being there, I think a new breed will just come up. When there's demand, there's always somebody who's going to make the product. If Coca-Cola's plant burns down, there's another quick brand that's going to make soft drinks. It's just not going to stop because Coca-Cola was shut down, right? Or it burnt down or whatever. Even if the law came in and said, hey, this is a bad drink. We don't want it anymore. It's going off the shelf. There will be another drink that's going to come and replace it for the public. So long as the public participates in the crime, and that's how I see it. I don't see it in any other way. So long as the public participates in the crime, the whole society is complicit. How do you tackle that? Because that's really my major question all the time to every person in your shoes, in different categories. I mean, I've spoken to people from the Interpol all the way, to state level and all of that, and city level. And it's always kind of like you're putting so much effort in going after that one guy who's trafficking 3 people, whereas you catch that guy, you save those 3 people. There is the next guy who's actually waiting for this guy to get caught to have his shining moment and bring on his batch of trafficked 3 people and make the money, because that client is always there the next day. What do you propose here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously solving this crime is the demand, and doing a mindset shift in buyers who are purchasing people for sex, and having that be something that no longer is acceptable. And we're going in the wrong direction right now with OnlyFans and Patreon and, porn at in your hand. That is not helping the situation at all, because I believe there's a direct link between people who engage in that behavior and they no longer get excited and they have to act it out in real life. And that's when they go contact a girl out on the street or on a prostitution ad. So I think we definitely need to recognize that we're on a path that's worse than we were even before. And we need to have some parents and some men step up and talk to their sons about purchasing people for sex. That's where we're at. We were at that point before, but we really need to focus in on that right now, especially with everything going on with porn at your fingertips.
I appreciate that there is perhaps a direct link between excessive consumption of pornography, and we're saying it. There's no denying that there's an excessive consumption of pornography. I mean, the internet is fueled with it, not just on these on websites, but all over the place. It's just the majority of the internet is used for porn. Having said that, there is some people would say there's a shift in the culture where the technology, things like OnlyFans, have brought in a certain level of security for women in the well, I don't even know if you'd call it the sex trade, because they aren't selling physical sex per se. In that sense of a traditional usage of the word prostitution. So if I'm and the majority. I mean, I read somewhere that over 90% of women on OnlyFans are under 24 years old. So let's just say I'm a 22-year-old girl, woman, and I decide, hey, I'm going to give it a try, and I make a lot of money there, and I'm successful, and I'm enjoying myself. The moral issues are up for discussion all day, and I'm morally not for it myself. But the legal issue is it's not trafficking. So how do you respond to that? Because that is why OnlyFans has grown, right? I mean, these spaces are growing because it's not legally trafficking. You cannot arrest someone for making. I mean, if you have an OnlyFans account, you have an LLC with a bank account, and the bank loves you as a client, and they serve you very well. And some of the creators are in their private banking levels, and they're treated just like multimillionaire account holders at the bank. So there's nothing illegal about it. They're paying their taxes. The government's all for them. How do you balance this?
Yeah. I think that there are some girls on OnlyFans that are being
Mm-hmm.
trafficked. I know of several in my cases where they had OnlyFans accounts also. So the pimp is making them carry out the sex acts in any way possible. And you have a whole bunch of people who are creating YouTube videos on how to get yourself some models, make them sign a legal contract to do sexual content, and threaten them if they don't continue to do that sexual contract, the content, then you're going to sue them. And I think that it's going to take, some prosecutors realizing that's a form of an exploitation. And we're going to need some people to step forward and come out and talk about that. So then that way people are more aware of that form of exploitation. And it may be, when you're talking about what trafficking is, it is the commercial sexual exploitation. Mm-hmm. And we maybe need to redefine what the sexual exploitation involves.
Right.
Because it is a sex act in exchange for money, whether it's happening on video or in live, capacity. That is for prosecutors and judges to work out. But we definitely need to go there, just like we need to go there with what are we going to do with robots and AI and all the other things happening right now. So, but I have had some cases involving girls that were forced to do sexual content, threatened through legal action to continue doing those things by the agency, which is, by definition, possibly the trafficker.
It's eye-opening what you just said, because we are traditionally, by the power of linguistics that kind of forces us to understand words that go through our ears into our brains and get processed. When you say trafficking, we're thinking of a girl physically being dragged into a street to perform as a prostitute, physically going into someone's car. I mean, the movies, the scenes in many cities around the world, that's what we're so, that's what we see. And then you put it in this sense that, it's in the digital world, it's something new. I mean, OnlyFans hasn't been around for 30 years for us to get accustomed to definition that has grown to incorporate that, right? I mean, we say Google it today, but if you said Google it 45 years ago, I wonder if there'd be any reaction, right? Because we don't linguistically understand the word. And trafficking to me just now sounded like that. Sounded like myself, the audience, many people around the world understand it as that traditional sense, whereas you're saying we need the resources to expand the word into this new ideation of involving tech, involving the digital industry, involving a newer form of pimping, not necessarily bring a girl to a street corner type of pimping. So how do you propose? I mean, where are the resources? Because everything you're saying kind of points to when you say the prosecutors didn't know, the police didn't know, we couldn't do it, and it's just so slow to evolve. It must be, to me, it's a country thing. It's a state thing. It's a federal government thing, maybe, that they're not putting the resources there as they are in perhaps other places that aren't that important.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are, especially survivors of sex trafficking, coming forward and helping push for legislation, and we are making changes. We're definitely not perfect yet, but there are new laws. Arizona just passed a law about if you traffic a child, actually, it's sex trafficking, period. So it could be a buyer or a trafficker involved with a child. You're facing a life sentence. So, getting stricter on buyers. I mean, legislation is where we're going to have to go forward with this.
I'm all with
and
you.
We're definitely going to need to generate legislation that handles the other forms of trafficking, like we were just discussing, possibly digitally, possibly AI, robots, those kind of things. We definitely need to think about the ramifications of all that.
And the psychological ramifications too, because I was reading a scientific technical paper that was talking about, well, some people may have these, ideas and thoughts and sexual tendencies and fetishes to perform certain acts. And now we have robots or sex robots, and should we just turn a blind eye to when you buy a sex robot and what you do behind closed doors because it's not real, it doesn't have rights, or, there's no life involved there? Or should we worry that at some point you're going to not react to this non-reactive robot and eventually seek, the human version of this situation, and then it really gets out of hand. So there's a lot of talk about different ways of approaching this, and you know what? I'm all for rehabilitation and support and on all spaces with criminals and everything, but sometimes I just can't help to think, when you are involved with children in this capacity and you're really taking a life forever, the trauma and everything, even as survivors, it's really difficult for them to come back and have a fully comfortable life. You deserve a harsh punishment for that. I mean, part of the rehab should be that really harsh punishment. So I appreciate that a lot more than, a slap on the wrist and go home kind of thing. Now, go ahead.
Well, yeah, well, and here's the other thing that I don't think people realize, that just because they're put in prison or jail doesn't mean anything stopped. I have so many cases involving traffickers still conducting business from within custody.
I know.
And it's things where we have the phones, we have mail, we have video visits, and now we have tablets in prison and in jail. And they promise they can't get on the internet. But if a 12-year-old can figure out how to bypass parental controls on a phone, a hardened criminal, a whole bunch of them together, can figure out how to get on the internet on a tablet provided by us. And it's one of those things too, where it's all about money as well. The prison system has to generate money, so people from the outside put money on the books to be able to use these devices and have access to the video visits and those kind of things. And unfortunately, it's facilitating more trafficking happening from within.
I was just about to bring that actually up, because I heard from somebody in the police force who said there's a lot of talk about crime and say the drug dealer or the trafficker or whatever it may be, but then nobody's really taking a keen eye to the prison system that is a capitalistic structure right now in the United States. And being that it's a capitalistic structure, it needs to think of profit and revenue and its budgets and costs and everything else. And that being the case, how else are you going to profit within a prison system if you're not selling the services that your guests, who are the inmates, will want to spend money on? So you're really not going to make a lot of money trying to, sell them things they don't want. But you give them, like you said, what they want, and they're paying. And who's paying for it? They're in there. They have no money. They have no access to money. There's got to be somebody doing something on the outside to facilitate this transaction. And so you're perpetuating the crime, in a sense, by seeking your own profit and self-sustenance as a prison.
Well, that's what it's all about right there, is the money.
And
so
everybody's complicit.
The other thing that is that I've had 4 pimps that I've put in jail or prison, and they got out and they went right back to trafficking. They didn't even blink an eye. About 6 years, 10 years, more than that. But they will blink an eye if, in the first case, instead of basing this entire thing off of just a victim, we do a financial investigation against them and we seize all of their stuff. They're going to remember that, and they're not going to want that to happen to them again. So hopefully that is what our next level up is going to be, where we have education to detectives on how to do a financial investigation alongside a victim-based investigation and seize assets, take cars, bank accounts, proceeds of all of this illegal activity, Gucci purses, Rolex watches, jewelry, all of the things that if you had no legitimate income coming in, that's all illegal and seizable items. And when we start doing that, then maybe people will think twice about doing this kind of behavior. But right now, we're not doing enough. And you would think we were doing enough by putting these people in prisons for 100+ years. We're not doing enough yet.
And you know what? It works. I mean, when you think back, very famous case, Al Capone. I mean, the end of him was financial. It wasn't all the stuff that he was doing. It was financial. It was the IRS. When the IRS stepped in, it ended, right? That gang ended when the IRS kind of stepped in. So you're right. I think sometimes going after the proceeds and going after the money, it just cripples some of these organizations and some of these ways of living, so to speak. Now, switching channels here in Talk to Them, you guide parents through difficult conversations about online safety. Speaking of, how you brought up the digital world today, which is the new world. I mean, we're even seeing it on the streets. I remember I lived, in Toronto. I was in the LA area for a while. I was in New York for a while. And I clearly remember there were areas that were popular with prostitutes standing on the streets, decades ago. Now, you don't really see that anymore because it's moved mostly to the digital platform and to, acquiring these services through ads and digital ads and websites and all of those things. So, and then, all the games and all the online platforms that kids are on that they get targeted on. So it's really no longer hang around the mall and wait for 12 to 15-year-olds to show up and kidnap them or whatever. It's become very different. So can we go over a quick, what are the most overlooked digital dangers kids face today and how these parents can notice that? Because I want to bullet point the parents and the audience can just put in their heads and say, I have to keep this in mind at all times.
Yeah. So the thing about the online presence is that everybody thinks if you get this number of subscribers or followers or likes, that you're going to start making money on social media because YouTube said so. And all these influencers say so. And so the draw for a kid to have an open to the public profile, whether their parents say it's okay or not, is the issue. because that is literally an open door into your house, into your child's bedroom, and you don't know who's engaging with your kid because of this open profile. So I think that parents need to educate themselves on the privacy settings and how to lock all of that down, and focus in on educating themselves about these apps, because there's a new one that pops up every other day. I mean, school just started. I'm sure there's, a school district pushing this certain app that the teachers use and the students can communicate with the other kids in the class. But it might be an app where a predator, my co-host just joined us, where a predator or, a trafficker can engage with a whole pool of students in that little app that the school is pushing for you to download. So I think educating, it is the job of a parent these days to be educated on how this happens and what these apps are and these games, and how it would be a dangerous situation for a child to be on them, especially if there's private messaging capabilities, if there's streaming live, talking to strangers, all of those things. Like, we need to actually pay attention. And I know a lot of parents do, and I know a lot of parents do educate themselves, but there are a lot that aren't. And that's why I wrote my book, is to give them a kind of a strategy on how to talk to their kid about this, but also other resources like I have Bark Technologies, an affiliation with them, and Gab Wireless, both companies that have devices that look like a smartphone, but they don't have the internet on them at all, or they have super parental controls. But more than that, both of those companies have blog articles on their website. So if your child approaches you and says, "Hey, mom, can I download this game or this app?" It's a place to go for a parent to look up, okay, how dangerous is this? These two companies have already done the work to figure out this is safe. This is easy for a predator to create a secret profile and act like a peer. Don't use this one. So I think that having a place to go and the education and the forethought of doing that action is where we're at with the digital threats that our kids are facing, and parents needing to get involved. Because I'm definitely on the other end of it, where I am meeting you when the thing has already happened and it's too late. And now I'm trying to get nude pictures off the internet and all the things, and get, this person who might be doing the same thing to other kids. And I'd rather have it not happen in the first place. So that's why I wrote the book. And I just had it translated in Spanish, because I think it's a vulnerability in itself that a kid is being targeted by a trafficker or a predator, and their parents may not understand when they start saying the boyfriend, that that's a trafficker, or this new person that's in this person's life is got bad intentions, and it's a vulnerability that they may not speak English and have the resources the same as someone who does. So that's why it was very important to me to get it out in Spanish in both print form, and then I'm about to upload the audio version as well. I don't speak Spanish. I wish I did, but I did have it translated by another female officer friend of mine. So it's a good thing.
You raise, well, first, I want to say thank you for the scope that you're working in, because I just realized the reason you bought the book, you wrote the book, and even got it translated, is not really to raise more awareness to your work or what you're doing and all of that, but actually it's you realizing that you're on the end of saving the person, and now you want to say, there's too many people in this ocean that I have to save. I can't get to all of them. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach the people on the boat to be more preventative, so that people don't fall off into the ocean that I have to watch them drown. And this is you working on both sides of the space. And had you not said all of that, I would have never thought it. And I would have thought you're trying to just bring more, kind of spotlight into that side of the work, saying it needs more resources, it needs all of that. But what's really happening here is you're saying, protect your kid before they get into a place where I have to get involved. I don't want to be involved. That is the goal for you. That's the exit strategy, which is beautiful, which I have so much more respect for you right now, because you're working with an exit strategy. You're working with a preventative measure. And this book is that prevention system, right? So, that's the thing. we have people like you, we have resources like the companies you've just mentioned, and it's all out there. So when these things happen to children, on the one hand, yes, there are bad people out there, but on the other hand, we have to be more careful. We can't just sit there and say the police is there. You know, we really have to be more careful as parents, and that's really what your book and everything you're doing is about as well. It's bringing that idea that we have to, you know, and that's speaking of the power of awareness. I mean, on the one hand, there's so much misinformation because, again, you know, you brought up things right now that you said that, you know, come from a place where I'm starting to think and overthink and rethink all of the things that I knew and all the ways that I used to think. And so I'm assuming, well, there was some misinformation in my head about certain things. Um, how do you help people distinguish real threats from distraction in that power of awareness?
Well, I think that basically law enforcement's overwhelmed, and we have nobody who wants to be a police officer anymore, and we have even less people who want to be a prosecutor because they don't get paid as much as the defense attorney. So why would they go be a prosecutor? So unless we get that shift and we have people really understand how this is happening and have those prevention conversations, we're already in a sinking ship, and we're going to be at the bottom of the ocean very soon, because there's a lot stacked up against us, as we've talked about all of these other things going on that are not helping this problem, from the jail, the access to the things, the online pornography in your hand. All of this has exploded, and unless we have people start reacting to this soon, it's going to be 10 times worse than it is right now. So that's my goal.
And you said something that's very aligned and super resonating to Compassiviste as a whole, as you know, the purpose of what we do. It's mindset shift. You said it earlier in the conversation, and that is what it takes. You cannot police this. You cannot police 8 billion people's desires, you know, from that sexual perspective, or from lust. You know, it's just a matter of you have to create that mindset shift. You have to create that ethics and morality and care and compassion and, you know, understanding each other as humans and all of that. So the fact that the police is overwhelmed, it won't get better by hiring more police officers. It's not going to solve the problem. You know, if you propose we need 100,000 more police officers, you're just going to arrest more people, and there's going to be more people replacing those people because the rest of the public, you know, especially men, as you said, there are women who participate too, but especially men, as a grand majority, you know, when they have disposable income, or you know, and they feel like it's okay, it's fair game to use it that way. I mean, what's $100 here, $500 there, $1,000 there to people who are making a lot of money these days, and it goes unnoticed. I come from a place of extreme wealth and privilege, and I'll tell you this: most people at that level of the crime never see the police, because it is so curated and it's so perfected and tailored to the clientele that there's never an engagement of you are never going to be in those rooms to be able to arrest these people. Let me just put it this way. So, and case in point, the Epstein situation, no police officer will ever be in a position to arrest any of the clientele that really mattered, because it's the way of the world. So it doesn't matter how many cops we have on the road, it's not going to stop all of them. I think what you said back then about the mindset shift is where all of the focus should really go, in terms of, you know, that extra resource. We do need monitoring. We do need the support on the street. We do need everything from the great people who are donating to have these establishments out there so we can support victims, all the way to people like yourself working in it, all the way to the police forces supporting it, the detectives, the psychologists, the medics. All of these people are necessary. The prison systems, they're all necessary in today's world. But more necessary than the combined force of this effect is the mindset shift. Because if you look at the growth and the, like you said, the explosion of this industry over the years with technology on top of it, proof it's not working. Policing alone is not working. So, I appreciate that you've left the force and taken this route, and you're bringing awareness, and that awareness is purpose to the mindset shift, because then you kind of are explaining to people how to, protect and how to be on the side of the fence that you're on, as opposed to even as customers, not just as parents, right? I mean, I'm thinking about this as a lot of men are involved, they're buyers of prostitution without necessarily knowing how complicit they are in the crime. So speaking with you
And
grows
that,
that.
yeah, we need businesses to make policies to zero tolerance. If you get arrested or caught, you're going to get fired. Like, we need businesses to step
Right.
up.
Their money shouldn't be going to this.
And make.
If I'm giving you an income for the job that you're doing, at that point, that's what it means. It means if I'm Coca-Cola and you're my employee and you get arrested for, buying sex from the income that I gave you, it means I'm hiring someone that I'm paying who is doing this crime, which kind of, in the long shot is my dollar from my Coke can revenue is going to serve prostitution. I don't want to be involved as Coca-Cola. So you're fired.
Yeah. Well, that, and I've had so many use the Coca-Cola vehicle and be on the clock when they've
Right.
approached me and solicited me. So, it's and use the computer at work to look up prostitution ads. It's
Right.
it's incredible. That businesses definitely, I mean, they're starting to be held accountable. Hotels are getting sued by victims and everything else. So, it's evolving into Airbnbs, and education to people who have Airbnbs on, you're literally renting your home to become a house of prostitution. Yes. And what do you do to get that person out of your house, and all the things. So there's lots of education that still needs to happen. There's legislation that needs to happen, and there's people that need to step up to the plate.
And you know what? And also for the public to be a part of this. I remember I was at a hotel once, and it was a nice hotel, and this gentleman was standing next to me with a woman, and the woman was dressed a little, very sexy. Let me put it that way. And so the security member in the hotel lobby thought that she was a prostitute, and he approached them, right? And he said, sir, can I see? And this is in a conservative place. And he said, sir, we want to see some ID before we let you guys, go in the elevator to make sure that you're both registered to the room and all of that. And, the person started arguing, and I was watching and listening all this. And I said, and I jumped in and I said, you know what? Look at it this way. If this is you and your girlfriend, however that arrangement is, and it's not what they're suspecting it is, then letting them verify that is not a big deal. Because imagine if you weren't you and it was another gentleman, and you had a daughter her age, and she was being trafficked in this situation, would you not want her to have an escape of saying, please help me in this situation? And a police officer can come there, and there could be some wall to protect her from what's going to happen. And the person just thought about it for a minute, and he said, from that perspective, I actually do have a daughter. And so, he went ahead and he was calm about it after that. And I thought, just like with airport security, right? I mean, whenever they check, and they check a lot, and I get racially profiled often. I'll put it this way, and I get pulled to the side, and it's random check, but I say it's fine. Profile me, please profile me, because I don't want another person to actually bring something on board and I die because you guys were too shy or too kind of conservative about racial profiling and stuff. It's fine. Go ahead. It's safer for the world. So I'm on you with that. But when you said men approach you, let's go undercover with you for a moment, because you did that for a while, right? And it takes a lot of courage, first of all, and there's some acting involved, so it takes skill as well, you know. I mean, you have to play the role, you know, so it takes skill, it takes courage. You have to speak the language, I guess, and act the part and everything else. Um, so, what myths about the work do you often confront? And tell us a little about what people assume and think, and how we're wrong about those things from your years undercover.
Well, I mean, I think people's perception of what a bad guy looks like needs to change, because I've arrested cops and doctors and nurses and day laborers and businessmen, people in shitty cars, people in nice cars. Um, it is, unfortunately, it could be anyone that participates as a buyer. And then the same goes with the trafficker. I mean, I've had female traffickers. I've had traffickers that were minors, if you can believe it.
Wow.
They were juveniles. Um, and it's one of those things where I've also made this determination that there's different types of trafficking. We have organized trafficking with massage parlors and brothels and cartels, and then we have individual trafficking. And I have experience with both. But the individual trafficking, the way that I've seen the behavior is that it almost seems like it's a generational thing, where like the car dealership guy wants to leave the car dealership to his kids so they can take on the family business. I have had so many traffickers where their mom was a prostitute, or uncle or dad or older brother, somebody else was a pimp, and it was a learned behavior that they grew up with. And that generational thing is going on that I don't think people realize. And then, as well as obviously, there's a dynamic when that's going on that the whole family knows. Like, I've had pimps' moms interfere with investigations. I've had to arrest them for destroying evidence, threatening people, intimidating witnesses, all the things. And they kind of know what's going on, and they might also be financially benefiting from it, which is also a problem. So I think that looking at these cases is, thinking that there's a possibility for all these other circumstances going on will also help. But that's only with law enforcement training that you would even recognize that all those things were happening. But that is important as well.
You arrested doctors and nurses, and sometimes these are the people who see the harshest and the saddest end points of trafficking and prostitution and all of these things, and yet they somehow disconnect themselves from what they see in the hospitals and still participate. There is a public that doesn't know. You're bringing awareness to them, and there's a public who are frontline public, police officers, like I said, doctors in hospitals, ER rooms especially, and nurses, and you see them back there kind of fueling that, and it's difficult. Like I said, it comes down to, we need that mindset shift. Now, you wrote the book, you do the talks, you bring the education, you come on shows. Let me ask you something, completely from the other side, is what is surprising you most about reaching people through, your book, media, and putting yourself out there and saying, look, I am a resource. I've done this for 30 years. I know what it is. Listen to me because I know, right? Compared to policing, for example, where you had the authority to be like, sit, stand, and people had to kind of respond to that because, it's authority, right? And here you don't have authority, but you have such value within you. And it hurts me to know that it's harder for you to probably extend that value and give all your gifts to the community and share all of that and see all of this end. And it's not happening as well as when you are in that uniform and you can just dictate to people, and you don't want to do that. You want to create that mindset shift.
Yeah. No, well, especially with speaking, and I'm trying to break into speaking, and I'm applying to conferences on a daily basis almost. I have an assistant that helps me. And I'm I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm an informational speaker. I'm not going to be all woo woo
Right.
and, everything's fine, honky dory. I am going to come in and tell you some truth. I'm probably going to make some people feel guilty in the room, but I think having businesses see that as important is what we also need, because that is how we'll get those policies put in place where actions taken as far as the punishment if you are found to be under arrest for these kind of things. Just like DUI. I mean, a lot of jobs now, you'll lose your job if you get a DUI.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be taken to that level as well. And that seen as of that importance.
You should apply to a lot of conferences to speak, because I'll tell you one thing: conferences is like a magnet for trafficking. A lot of people come from,
Also true.
they come from all over the place, out of town, and it's a place for trouble. So I've seen it very often. I've always had an eye for this because I was involved with a shelter house that I used to finance and fund. And basically, it was a halfway house for kids who ran away from home or who ran away from some abuse that nobody would listen to them or something. A friend of mine got me involved because she was involved as a social worker. And I didn't really get involved. I just paid. That was my way of doing things because I had money. So I was like, what's this much going to do? It's going to help a lot of people. It's not doing anything for me. Might as well. So I did that. But really, that's all I did. But I always kept my eye open because of all the stories I heard and everything else. And I would go places and I would notice them when I didn't notice them before. You go to places and you're like, this looks odd. This girl here looks odd. That guy standing over there and those three girls standing over here look odd. So many things start looking odd. And you just start catching things. And sometimes, I wish that people pay more attention to the choices they make when it comes to this kind of stuff. And it makes a world of a difference to support the police force and detectives and people like yourself outside trying to raise those things. I want to ask you a question about the feminist angle to this, because a lot of women, a lot of men, a lot of feminists are, not all of them, but there is a branch that is kind of trying to separate trafficking and the crimes and everything else from the freedom and the liberty of a woman gaining, economic benefit, essentially, more than anything else. Because I don't think anybody's coming around and saying, this is a joyful or anything like that. But predominantly, it's for the money. I mean, even if it brings you joy to do this kind of work, it's predominantly because it pays well. So what do you say to that? I mean, are you on the side of the fence that says, yeah, you know what, women should be able to do sex work or adult work, as they say, and for whatever is pornography all the way to traditional sex work? Or do you think it is all connected in one sphere, and whether you're empowering women or not, this shouldn't be an avenue for women to feel empowered through?
Yeah, I think that we can take a lesson from other countries where it is legalized and the problem didn't go away. It got worse. The exploitation got worse. Children got involved still. So it didn't change anything. And then I think we should listen to survivors because they'll tell you. And they'll describe the brainwashing and the coercion and the threats and all the things that go along with how we even prove these crimes, and all the things that it affected them after and the trauma. And I don't think that that's the way to go. I don't think legalizing it is the answer.
You think it'll just perpetuate the crime because it makes it easier? It makes the layers easier for them, and it makes it much harder for the police, I guess, to turn around and say this is trafficking, because now you have the law on their side, essentially.
Yeah, I don't know how we would even hold anyone accountable for exploiting people like I've been describing this whole time.
Right. And you know what? I'll say this. It's much less that you see or you find people in the pornography industry, getting arrested for trafficking and things like that, because there is an element of a supposed willful appearance and involvement, and an agent and a company and all the things that you mentioned earlier. Whereas, a traditional guerrilla setting, like you said, the gang and that kind of setup of a massage parlor or something, is much easier to kind of break into and say, we know what this is, because it doesn't have those, associated laws to kind of allow them to practice in those ways. But when they do, it becomes almost impossible to break in those places anymore. So I get where you're coming from.
Well, and yeah, and even in Las Vegas, or in Nevada, in Nevada, not all of Nevada is legalized prostitution, only certain counties. And even where the strip is, it's not legal. And people think it is. They're trying to get you in that free limo ride to the other county. Anyway, I've been to the one of the prostitution houses in an undercover capacity. And, there's all of these rules and STD testing and all the things, but are they testing buyers that come in?
Mm-hmm. How?
And if you get something, you're fired. You can't do it no more. So then what are you left with? What do you have on your resume? And then you have obligations, you have bills, and you're going to go the other route, unfortunately, because, and that's the thing with victims who escape the life. I mean, how do we, when we're trying to rescue and rehabilitate them, get them a job at Taco Bell, making minimum wage and saying, here you go, we got you a job. You're ready to start your life and be a normal society contributor now. It just doesn't work that way. They know they can make $80 in 5 minutes for a job. So it's one of those things where I think the other problems that are associated with if we were to go that route are outweigh it with issues than the route that we're on, where we're trying to make a difference and help get people out of the life and rehabilitate them and get people to stop buying people for sex and all those things.
It is, at the end of all of it, an addiction to money in the speed and the capacity that you can access it, which is the same as any other addiction, drugs, alcohol, whatever, you're gambling, whatever you may call. It comes down to, like you said, it's not easy to rehabilitate through the whole thing. And some people have done it. Some people are successful, just like some people have quit cocaine and they're successful now in their lives and they're happy. And they went up that mountain and got to the top. But you're right. It is very difficult. And it's voices like yours that really shed a light from a place that becomes less argumentative for the voices that, like you said, they kind of get up there and say, this is my freedom, my body, and all that stuff. And then you kind of, voices like yours are the ones that bring the logical and the sound arguments of other societies, other histories, the way things work, and personal experiences that many of these theoreticians and advocates for freedom and liberties in certain ways have never actually seen or been. They probably have never been in an undercover role like you have before they thought of what to advocate for. So their advocacy really comes from reading a couple of books and a couple of success stories and say, well, she should have all the right to do that. So yeah, we should have more of your voice out there. Really, we should. We should have it louder, much, much louder. What is one thing that you always want to share with people when bringing this topic up? I mean, what is that one burning thing inside you that also many people may never ask or know to ask because we don't know any better?
Yeah, so I've had lots of interviews, obviously, with hundreds of victims of trafficking. And unfortunately, a lot of the incidents where they've been in a violent incident with their trafficker was out in public and people were walking by, driving by, no one did anything, or they broke out their phone to film it for TikTok. So I think the most important thing is recognizing, not being scared to report and knowing where to report. We have the National Human Trafficking Hotline, but the national hotline is in DC. That's really far away from Arizona. In addition to that, the national hotline was actually created for survivors to escape the life, but not necessarily involve law enforcement. And they are not mandatory reporters. So it's one of those things where other states, like Arizona, created their own hotline, which is manned in assistance with ASU, but also a law enforcement entity. And if a child calls, obviously we're going to start an investigation. But people need to know that that exists. People need to know what they're looking at. And so I have a resource on my website, achanceforawareness.com, that has, I call it my sex trafficking indicators list. And it is an exhaustive list of, the branding tattoos or the terminology being used that you might overhear, or all kinds of circumstances that, a couple of things are happening that I've identified on this list with the person that you're observing or that making a phone call isn't going to hurt anybody, and it could be saving that person's life. So knowing that if it's a crime in progress happening right now, that's still 911. You don't have to, where's that line? What's our state's hotline? You don't have to Google all that. Just call 911 because that's what they're there for, and it's not a waste of their time. But I think that's most important, is how to recognize and how to report.
And on your website, I've seen that you do have a lot of information there. And I think it would be great for people to go there. And like you said, it's all information. That's what you do. You're bringing awareness. I mean, you've named what you're doing perfectly with awareness, because it's exactly that. You're allowing people to see what they wouldn't know otherwise. And just like you said, the lingo, the knowing the language. You could be I don't know, an employee in a store, and somebody comes in and speaks that language. You can understand what's happening there. You could be at a bank as a teller, and you could understand maybe this account is complicit to something, and help that person. There's so many ways that we can raise our understanding and be supportive of the situation. Now, being that we don't live in a perfect world, and there's only so much you can do as a person, and so much the police can do as a person, and all of that, if you did have all the power, and let's just speak about the United States, where it inside out, 30 years of the work that you do. I mean, you qualify for 10 times over a PhD in your field. So what would be the first action you take to ignite a global shift, towards moving away from this, which essentially not only reduces the crime, but reduces so many other crimes? Because, when you're making, $1,000 a month from this kind of work, it's easy to just pay cash for your groceries and other things. But when you're starting to make $1 million a month, and it's all untraceable, illegal, and all of those things, now you need money launderers. Now you need people, but you need so many businesses to kind of service your original business, right? And so it just mushrooms into the jewelry industry, the goods, the high fashion. I mean, so much of, like you said, the Gucci and the Rolexes is not purchased by doctors who are earning really well. It's purchased by a lot of people who, like you said, made $80 in 5 minutes. So society becomes complicit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all that's part of the perception.
Yeah.
For a trafficker to be flashy and have an expensive Maserati and bling down, that feeds into this perception of when they're targeting a person, they think that they're successful because all of that appears to be money and success. And why not that person as a 14-year-old? Because they're going to take care of me.
And of course. And exactly that. Why not? And you can't really explain to them why not, because what are you going to say in a world that is catering to money and worshiping money? And somebody comes and tells you can make the doctor's income in 1 month. What argument can you present that person to serve society, be a doctor, be a nurse, be an engineer, but do something, be a plumber, be whatever, but serve society or your community in some way, be productive? and they say, I am being productive, I am serving society, and I am making a lot more money. So it is, again, a question of mindset shift. But what would you do? What would be that first thing? You become chief in charge of this situation, and they just give you the keys to it. What do you do?
Yeah, well, if this problem was still in existence like it is today, I think we're not there yet either with helping victims get out, and especially juveniles. Um, we have a situation where I don't know that we have placement for boys. I don't think we have placement for kids in transition or resources for those. And then in addition to that, when we do rescue a kid, we have a protocol in place now that we didn't have before. So we're at least in the right direction. But the protocol is where we have this child put with other kids that have never experienced that. And they're not segregated and focused in on by themselves. And I feel like that's kind of infesting this idea, because we have a lot of recruitment going on out of group homes and placements that we put these kids in, trying to keep them stable and offer resources and all the things, but we're putting them in a sterile environment where other kids have never heard that you can make $80 in 5 minutes for a blowjob. And then we have to try and introduce that kid to their trafficker. Now we have 2 kids on the run. So I think in a perfect world, we would have like a streamlined, for these particular type of victims, resources that segregates them into focused resources, focused efforts to get them on the path to recovery, and not intermixing them, because resources are limited, and unfortunately we don't have placements that can fund that type of resources just to that one particular type of victim. So that would be a perfect world thing for sure.
So you would do the quarantining kind of methodology to not spread, all that it is from one place to another, because that is a dangerous wildfire.
Well, we're learning from our own mistakes, because we used to call Department of Child Safety, hey, come get this kid. I got to go break down doors and get the bad guy. And then they would take them to a random group home. And then we had them infest that group home. And now we've got 3 or 4 girls running away and back out on the street and being introduced to trafficking. So learning from our own lesson, that is definitely something we need to really change really soon. We're halfway there with the things that we put in place, but the resources to have a placement that's just that kind of that victim. And it sounds awful to segregate or quarantine. Those are awful words, but that's not our intent. It's really to focus in on giving them all the resources that they need.
I didn't mean the quarantine in a bad connotation. I just meant it in the sense that you don't want to bring one person going through something where the others haven't been through, and then they start talking and opening up to each other, and then now everybody's like, "Ooh, this sounds interesting. Let's all go together." No, I fully get that. I understand that. How can we help you? Audience, Compassiviste, the world listening, what do you need essentially in what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I need parents to talk to their kids. And if you don't know how, that's why I wrote the book. And then I need people to stop buying people for sex. Definitely need that. And we need people not afraid to call and, report things that they see. And there are good Samaritan laws that protect you from being sued or held, something over you if you report a crime. And we need people to not be filming TikToks, but actually be reporting crimes. So then that way people are scared to do that out in public. Because right now nobody's worried about nothing. Nobody's going to call because the public doesn't see it as getting involved will help it do anything. But I think that's wrong.
Call first, TikTok second. Because you get the call out. There's some officer responding to this, then the TikTok helps in kind of saying, there you go. There's video evidence of what I was just explaining, right? But don't start the TikTok without the call. So that's good advice. And get the book is very good advice. And not just for parents, for everybody. I know you say parents, but if you're a neighbor, and three houses around you have kids, don't feel like just because you don't have kids and you have two cats and a dog that this isn't your problem and you wash it. These are kids, this is your community. Like, you don't want to see your neighbor's daughter disappear and all that trauma and pain go through your neighborhood if you could have been helpful in that situation. So really, the information in the book is for everybody. We should all be parents. We should all have that parenting in us. And that's one of the things we're kind of losing these days is they're not my kids. Well, yeah, they may not be your biological kids, but have some humanity, have some compassion, right? I mean, it comes down to that. So everybody should read that book and be involved, like Heidi says. Thank you, Detective Heidi Chance, for speaking on Compassiviste Dialogues. And thank you for proving what one person can do when they refuse to look away, from your undercover operations in Phoenix to writing for digital age parents. You demand we stop enabling predators through ignorance or fear. Your work isn't just about punishment. I learned today it's about prevention, preparedness, communication, and raising courageous awareness with families and institutions and businesses, with changing laws and bringing in new policy. Essentially, you're working to minimize child trafficking, if not end it altogether. Because, and I'll use your words here exactly, silence empowers the trafficker, but knowledge empowers us all. I use that now. So I'm going to ask you permission, but I do use it now. I tell them, silence empowers the trafficker, knowledge empowers us all. So that's something I've learned from you. So thank you. And to our audience, please subscribe to Compassiviste Dialogues channel and share this episode. And the reason I ask people to subscribe again is, going back to what you said about the kids wanting the likes and the follows and stuff. It's not that. I'm not taking anything from this. It's to bring the eyes to you so that all these parents who are in a situation, oh my God, what do I do? How do I protect my child? I am in a vulnerable state, or I am, in a position where I'm feeling something's happening. And instead of just sitting there and worrying and whatever, not knowing what to do, this is why I do this, so that you have something to do. So the more you share this and the more, you tell people there is a woman called Heidi Chance, I'm going to Google her. Let me see what she says. The more you can start helping people. So that's why we need this to go viral, because this is how we save lives. This is how we prevent these problems. And we've put all the links to Heidi Chance, A Chance for Awareness, and Compassiviste below, so that you can just click on them and go to the website, get all the information, get the book, read the book. It's not a novel. It's not a 700-page book. It's a very easy read, and it's very to the point, and you'll retain a lot of the information in that book. It's very well written. It's very technical. Let me put it that way. So it's a good thing to know that book inside out. We're here to help change the world together. I'm Ali Horia.